When it comes to health, so many people are confused. They don't know what to focus on, for how long to focus, and there's two key areas that comes up. One is they're trying to consume more and more information, waiting to take action on that first step. And two is that all of it might be useful, but not all at the same time. So I want to talk you through how to chunk your focus down into seasons so that you can get way more done with way less confusion. And I think this is a really, really key part of working with anyone beyond a 12-week or a 6-week program, and fundamentally how we design all of our mastery programs to make sure that people have a particular focus for long periods of time. We're not just talking a couple months, we're talking our clients that have been with us 3, 4, 5+ years, and they have more momentum than they've ever had before. And that doesn't happen very often. So many people do a plan, they get stuck, and then they start again next year. And the season component is a huge part of that. So I guess fundamentally what we're looking at here, Mandy, is the shift of when to push and when to pause, but not on everything, right? And it's getting rid of this all or nothing attitude of like, all right, I'm just going to work really hard for a period of time, then hopefully I can maintain that.
Mhm.
Instead of saying like, cool, for this next period of time, I'm going to focus on getting strong. And then after that, I'm going to have a really lovely base so that I can get lean. And then once I've got that right, I'm going to play around with getting my fitness on track. And I'm going to rotate between those three. None of those in isolation feel overwhelming. They just feel focused, rather than trying to get fit, strong, and lean all at the same time. And that just feels like this is so much information, so much I'm trying to do, and it's so hard to fit in my life.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the way we take clients through body reset and is probably a really good example. So I'm always taking the at one of our squad calls, which is one of our monthly calls, at around the 3 to 4 month mark. And we have this conversation a lot about the seasonal aspect, which is to this point, you've been building these nice foundations. These are the things that are going to stick with you, and you're going to continue doing. They're the kind of the things that you protect that allow you to have, health and energy and a body composition that you want and whatnot. But at that point in time, we've got this opportunity to change focus for a little bit, change the season, and look at, okay, where do we want to go from here? Is it actually going into a targeted fat loss season for a time? Or is it going into a build season to really build some muscle? Or is it going into an intentional maintenance season, which I think is something which a lot of people miss out as well. So many of us have done programs or various things before where you go and you get the results, but there's no aftercare of how do we keep this. And so actually breaking it down into this is what we're focused on right now, it just removes all that fluff of information, because I think that's what really confuses you, right? Is we have so much availability of information, but there's so little context on what's necessarily relevant for you at the moment that you're in and what it is you're trying to achieve. So not only is it giving you a clear plan, but it's actually asking the question of what are we trying to achieve right now, first and foremost, and then we can apply a really nice seasonal plan.
Yeah, and I think many of you as listeners will know that I've been laboring away at some version of expanding on a book at the moment, and this has been one of these key concepts that I've spent a lot of time on. Is okay, what sequence does this really look like? Because I think working with a client dynamically, it's nice to be able to create that season up front, but I think there is, as I highlighted before, a really nice sequence of okay, if I want all of these things, I want to be strong, I want to be lean, and I want to be fit, what order should I tackle them in? And I spent so much time on that like key concept because that's like fundamentally shifting how I design the entire book, like that one key question. And
Mm.
it's a really nice way to think about, well, which one makes the other two easier? And as we've talked about so many times on this podcast, is if we just try get lean before building some sort of base, we have zero metabolic capacity to really get the job done, right? It's like trying
Mm.
to burn through 100 liters of fuel in a little scooter engine. It's going to take way longer rather than building up that big V8 and having some capacity to work with. While also, if we're trying to get fit first, we'll find that with any level of muscle mass or holding a bit too much body fat, we're in a space where our blood sugars aren't really in the right space, our recovery capacity is not great, hormonal environment's not amazing. So we tend to put on fat, even though we tend to get fitter. And there's too many people in that space that get up to like a half marathon and they're still carrying 10+ kilos that they shouldn't be. So really rewinding that a little bit. Okay, cool. You're starting to get an idea of where I like to start is strength. Like actually get strong, build some contraction and some tissue, so that when we start to get into some sort of fat loss season, or even if we don't need to drop body fat, then moving into a fitness season, strength is still anchor number one. Now, the reason I'm taking the time to go here first is that it forces you to think about the season you're in through three lenses, right? Is it strength? Is it fitness? Is it fat loss? And if you just ask that question as a lens or a filter before you started looking at this information, you just simply start asking, oh, instead of like, oh, I should be doing this, does this feel relevant for the current season I'm in? And if you literally just ask that question, I think confusion ultimately is eliminated. Sometimes the question becomes, is this for a female audience, a male audience? Is this for a 20-year-old audience or a 60-year-old audience? That's, again, another filter to look through. But I think fundamentally this is still more relevant, and you will still get closer to your goal, is saying, what version of those three lenses are we looking at? Now, there's probably others. We could look at flexibility and mobility. We could look at mental health. We could look at just a full deload season. There's plenty of other nuances we could look at there. But for most people, those three become a nice focus. So, Mandy, I'm going to give you a little nudge here. If you go into a strength season for you, what are like two things that are just, there's all this other noise out there, but what's like two things that you nail?
Food intake, total food intake.
Yep. So you're strong and you're not weak.
Yeah.
Yep.
Predominantly protein, obviously, and then consistency of actual locking in the training and actually doing it and actually pushing on that and not just showing up and just doing what I've always been doing, but actually being intentional about that push.
Yeah, lift something heavy. Like if you want to get stronger, lift something heavy. If you're always doing the 12 rep range and wondering why you're not getting stronger, but you're always leaving 2 in the tank, like why would your body get stronger, right? Whereas if you're in a more of a fat loss season, you can kind of get away with not going to full failure, but there's a density component of it. So you start cramming 2 or 3 sets to 2 or 3 exercises together over 4 or 5 different sets, and it's more of a total accumulation of volume that we tend to have in place. But if you've got no strength capacity beforehand, it's still pretty unhelpful. But there's those small nuances of, okay, where should I have carbs in my day? The next question I'm always asking is, well, what's the goal? And if you're having carbs pre-workout, you might be stronger for the workout. If you're in a fitness phase, you probably need carbs after the workout because there's a little bit more carbs that you're burning through in the workout itself and you need to recover. If it's a strength session, you really aren't burning through that much carbs. It was better to have it before the workout. Like there's so much more nuance and where that integration of nutrition and training, even at a professional level for so many people, is still missing. And I think just that small understanding of what season am I in can make all the difference in your confidence around, is this working?
I think what we run into, right, is that there is so much information out there that's all right. There's heaps of great information out there. There's heaps of great things that you could be doing, but are they relevant to what you're trying to achieve right now? And you only know that if you ask the question, well, what problem am I trying to solve, or what am I actually trying to work towards? Is it, like you say, strength gain, or is it fitness building? But I really like how you said that about there kind of being, even if your goal is to build some muscle or get real strong or whatever, but you're back at where you've got a whole lot of fat to lose and you've got blood sugar issues that are all over the place and you've got no foundation of actual just training and eating well, that's got to be the start point. So there's kind of seasons on multiple levels, right? There's a season of what's your focus right now, but then also what order do we do those things in? And I think that's really important too, because otherwise you can end up kind of feeling like you're trying to do it all at once, when actually the first thing to do is build the foundation first, and then we can add the next layer on top of that and add the next layer on top of that, and it becomes so much more targeted and achievable.
Totally. So I didn't finish that question before, but with your strength, you're kind of prioritizing protein and you're lifting heavy things with your weights. That's your strength phase. If we were to keep that same simplicity of 1 to 3 things with like a fitness phase, like you finally, you're ignoring your knees because they hurt, but you're wanting to get into some running. What's the shift that you're fundamentally looking at to get fit versus getting strong?
Yeah, really good question. So it wouldn't be stopping the strength training for me, but it may be a slight pulling back on their total amount, and then adding in more of that targeted cardio training and a mixture of what that looks like, but then also still being aware of the food intake. And I think there's a difference here. And actually, one of our coaches brought this up the other day when he was training for his first Ironman, which he never quite got to doing. He put on quite a bit of weight, and he said what he was doing was he was getting this massive uptick of hunger because he was outputting a whole lot more. So he just ate to match it, and he just put on a whole ton of weight. And it was a really interesting kind of point to make that, in any season, whatever it is, so a fitness one, there's some variables that will need to be changed and adjusted based on how your body responds to that. And that might look quite different to how it looks in a strength season or in a fat loss season. So, just being more aware of the food in the sense of we still need the food there to recover, but you can't go and eat like a horse just because you're going for a run once a week.
Yeah, it's actually quite interesting, and this has been a component that I'm glad you brought up with like the strength season versus the fitness season. Fat loss a little different again. Is there are absolutely still weight loss in all three? Weight training in all three examples.
Yeah.
The total volume of strength training will be higher, obviously, in a strength season than a fitness season. But for example, running, I'm absolutely going to keep a strength dominant weight training session available for the runners because
Mhm.
it's all of that extra range, capacity, contractile strength required to stay strong and hopefully keep injuries at bay when running. But the nutrition side is really important because typically you're going to have a total higher carbohydrate allowance for someone who is running and doing high levels of cardio versus someone who is strength training. But it's a really tricky balance because you might increase your carb requirement of say 40 to 60 grams a day based on bringing on, again, totally depends on all sorts of factors, but say that amount. But if you have a carb increase of, say, 40 grams that's come in from your running, but you're running a lot and you feel like you could have 200 grams of carbohydrates, it's quite easy to see how people get fitter and fatter at the same time because
Yeah.
that increase in hunger usually is still significantly higher than that increase in actual carbohydrate tolerance, right? And I saw this in the triathlon space all the time. People would do a 2 hour triathlon and then eat their face off for the next 2 hours and eat way more calories than they ever burnt off. And I
Yeah.
think it's kind of a nice nuance and it's certainly a progression or training you've been going down recently with more of our sports specific clients, which is not a
Mm.
huge section of what we do, but I'd say 15% or so is get really specific about like again what phase you're in and then what are your actual carbohydrates amounts that your body needs, not just what you like to have. And I think this is a
Mm.
kind of interesting balance between the listening to the signals of your body, making sure that you feel healthy and feel energetic on the foods you're eating, right? If you've got a whole lot of bloating, it's worth listening to that. But then
Mm.
there's this other side, which is, oh, I feel hungry, so I must need more food. I'm like, well, look at the type of training you're doing, because if you're strength training, you're not really going to feel that hungry. But if you're doing a lot of cardio, you're going to feel hungry all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to eat more. And we've
Mm.
seen this a lot with, our cardio bunnies or the circuit classes or whatever it might be, is sometimes that's doing more harm than good, not because of the actual activity, but the hunger response associated with it. And you just eat way too much afterwards.
Yeah, I actually see this all the time with the blood reports that I'm doing at the moment, which
Mm,
I've done a lot of, and a lot of the ladies coming through who are doing the right, like, this is where it's confusing, right? Because it can feel like you're doing the right thing. We're told in the general kind of information to move more and eat less.
hmm
Um, and then if you don't know how to strength train or have never done it before, you're typically going to go to the path of least resistance with any type of movement, which would be jumping on a bike or going for a run because anyone can do it, sort of thing. And there's this massive increase in hunger that occurs, and then they find themselves putting on weight rather than losing weight. Maybe they feel good because they're moving more, but it's not achieving the thing that they actually tried to achieve with that action in the first place. And it's that kind of lack of specificity of the action, and also realizing, well, what is it that you want to achieve. And I had this conversation with a lady the other day who was looking to running a half marathon. It's like, actually, if we want to go into that strong and well and recover from it and do that really well, let's actually put some time into some strength training initially and build up, that muscle that's going to allow you to run well and hold your form well and protect your joints and all of that so that you can keep doing the thing. Because there's no point to being able to do one and then one and done, I can't do any more because I screwed my knees up.
Yep. And I think regardless of whether you look at yourself as an athlete or not, I think it's actually one, push on that a little bit and see what if I saw myself as an athlete? How would things change? Because I think it's a really nice identity to try out sometime. Be by how you respect your body, by how you look after and fuel yourself. Just what if, right? Put yourself in that frame of what would it look like if I saw myself as an athlete? And usually is a little bit more self-care, a little bit more recovery, not just pushing yourself harder. The second part to that almost becomes that focus on what season you are in as almost a hybrid athlete. So even if someone wants to get ready for the rowing world champs, right? We have a couple ladies in sort of the masters space, either in Wakarama, running, rowing, etc. And we will still spend 2 to 4 months of the year trying to reduce the volume of that particular activity and get their aerobic capacity up, get their strength up, get their fat down through all specific seasons before they get into a very sport specific focus. And I think even if you remove that world masters, whatever that they're getting ready for, you can still see yourself as that hybrid athlete. And I think it's a really refreshing way to look at health, and I know you do it as much as I do, is there'll be a particular time of the year where you're particularly jazzed on mountain biking or hiking or getting strong or going through a fat loss season, getting ready for Bali, or like there's all of those areas that allow you to be like, oh, there's a new focus. I'm going to lock and load. And it's not a
Mm.
week. Like you have to really work through that chipmunk brain and keep that focus for 3, 4, 5 months. But there
Mm.
is a strong intention of one particular focus. And I think I see
Mm.
that in you. I see that in many people that are in a program nailing it and outside, where they're able to get themselves excited based on either an totally arbitrary or an actual date of a goal to just make
Mm.
sure there's a little bit more of a season. And I think all of the nuances we've kind of talked about a little bit here with, okay, well, what does that mean for nutrition? Or what does that mean for my training volume? What does that mean for recovery? Allows you to be a lot more specific around what information you listen to. And I'll only push back slightly on what you said before, which is all information is right. The concept or saying I use here is that 99% of information is crap, but of the 1% that's accurate, there's still only a small percentage of that that's relevant for you right now, right? So
Mm. Mm.
removing the like we've all got to sift through the bullshit to find information that's actually useful. I think all of us feel that because like, oh, there's some crap out there. But once you then find the stuff that is actually right, there's still a big gap between what's right and what's relevant. And I think just getting, you not being clear on the season is what makes that confusing, not the information you're actually reading, right? So I think there's maybe a bit of ownership on that I'm really pushing back on, but it gives you an ability to get clear on that discipline of focus.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that there is a ton of correct information out there, but you do have to sift through a whole lot to get to that. Um, and I think well, fat loss season is a good example here, but we do this with our clients, right? As we quite often have a discussion around, say, a 90-day goal or something like that, really to push on that point a little bit of we can't just be jumping from one goal to the other all the time because if you allow your brain, my chipmunk brain, anytime through the week, I could have I'm going to get fit, I'm going to get trail running, and then the next day I'm like, oh, I want a big ass, I'm going to like do some strength training. I'm going to like do a cut again. You can chipmunk around and achieve nothing. So actually allowing yourself to be like, okay, I'm going to spend the next 2 or 3 months on a specific thing. And I specifically have this discussion with people who want fat loss because the longer I do this, the more I'm getting opposed to too quick a fat loss for a lot of people because it just rebounds if we're doing it at the expense of energy and muscle mass and all of those sorts of things. So I'd rather take someone through a lot, not long, not like 6 months or a year, but let's take 3 months to really understand fat loss for an individual. And that looks like maybe some tracking or definitely some forms of tracking, understanding what works, what doesn't, a little bit of an adjustment here, a little bit of a refeed here, tweaking it down. But it requires you being committed to staying in that season for long enough to get the goods out of it. Because if you just dip your toe in and dabble for a week and then say, this isn't working, you're leaving it all on the table anyway.
Yeah. I think the only variable, or the biggest variable in that, there's many, many variables,
Mm.
is how long can the individual delay gratification? And I think that's the key part that on the side of all this, you're absolutely correct from a scientific standpoint. But everyone listening to this will know their version of like, if I don't see results in 2 weeks, I'm a little bit disgruntled. If you trust that process, and you're like, I'm good to run with this for 2 months before I expect anything.
Mm.
I know that person's going to look amazing in 6 months and in 12 months and continue to in six years or whatever it might be, right?
Mm.
But there's always that fine balance that if people, and why I hear it too often, a little bit less now because we put a lot of filters in place to talk to the right people. But they're like, oh, if I don't see results, I'm usually out in 2 weeks. I'm like, cool. So you entirely set yourself up for failure because I must make this plan restrictive so that you get results in 10 days, so that you're good
Mm.
to go in 3 weeks, right?
Mm.
So I think there's that variable of the more, and I think I'm seeing this year a lot. I think you'd agree, where the quality of clients we're talking to, because we're intentionally putting more hoops in place that people have to jump through in order to apply to work with us, has meant that they don't have to be athletes. Some of these people are starting from complete ground zero, but they have a level of delayed gratification. They're able to say like, look, I followed you guys for a while. I really love what you're about, and I want to make sure that I look and feel amazing. But I know there's going to have to be some changes from what I'm currently doing. And in most cases, it's actually doing less or just doing different. It's not actually just doing more of everything, but they know that they need to trust the process for more than 3 weeks in order to really solidify that, because we're always playing that sliding scale of psychology between how quick do I need to do this in order to get this buy-in versus how slow can I do this to really make it last long term. And I think that's really, unfortunately and fortunately, is up to the individual in front of us. And if we can present that the right way, and certainly with people listening to the podcast or our best clients, because they have that context of, I trust these guys, they've done it thousands of times before, and I know they can replicate it.
And we often have that conversation with clients as well, right? If there's a goal that's trying to be achieved, at what speed do you need to achieve this in order to feel like you're making progress? Like,
Yeah.
could we go 3 weeks with nothing changing, but
Mhm.
knowing we're doing the right thing? Would you still be motivated? If not, how do we tweak it and adjust it in order to? And for some people, even when mentally that it's a long, slow process, you still want to see something happen quite quickly. So it's like, okay, we can touch the fire and just feel how much it burns if you want to.
Yeah.
But we've always got this plan to come back to, and we know that it's going to take a little bit longer. So it very, very much is a psychology discussion there as well. But it's something that I know, like in your own head, you kind of know. Sometimes I just need to see it a little bit faster. But I guess it's that reinforcement of, even if you touch the fire and you're like, oh yeah, that didn't feel so good. This is what I'm coming back to. This is what I'm going to do, and this is the season that I'm in, and that's going to clarify where the focus goes.
Yep. I agree. And I think that highlights one really, really important part, is that we don't have one specific plan where it's like, cool, you just all have to follow this until you get results. That allows us to show you how many different variables are at play: nutrition, training, sleep, and all of the nuances within those three areas. That allow us to speed up, slow down, and really kind of be more specific to the result, because there's so many things we could look at. The last thing I want you to lean on here, Mandy, before we wrap up, will be the track with numbers, not emotions, right? Because you kind of highlighted this through the chipmunk brain of, we might set a goal for 6 weeks, and 6 days in we go, well, now I want to get strong, not just fit. And I
Yeah.
think making sure that you really have that anchor as the coach and as the client, that you are able to delay the emotional response of, well, I feel weak today, so the strength phase isn't working. I'm like, because you slogged yourself for 3 days in a row, and day 4 is a rest day. Like, that's part of the process. So what you're doing is, a chapter of the book, hint, hint, is tracking weeks, not days, right? And I think it's a really nice way to look at, well, where's my progression of strength from Wednesday to Wednesday, not from Tuesday to Wednesday, to make sure that there's some actual hard numbers you're looking at. And whether that's, again, get specific around the season. You don't need to track everything all at once, but what's your key focus? My top 3 right now would be HRV, so a recovery factor, my current protein target, right, or some macro split if there's a particular specific focus there, or a particular lift that I'm trying to get strong on: deadlift, bench press, pull up, whatever. So that I'm clear on, like, what is my metric, what is that number I'm mentioning. And I'm like, I can feel a bit tired and I can feel a bit demotivated on a particular morning, but if the net positive is there and I'm seeing that number head in the right direction, my season of whatever that goal is working. Stick with it.
Yeah, totally. This is why I love averages more than I love specific numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get averages, you need to track the specific numbers. So in a way, you really have to mentally detach yourself from those numbers. So for weight, for example, you jump on the scales at the same time, same scales, same time of day, all of that sort of stuff. Track the number and forget about it. Track the number and forget about it. Track the number and forget about it. And then look at the average over a week or 2 weeks. And that's what you then may determine your next steps from, not what happened on any given day. And I think exactly the same with fitness or with strengths, because sometimes you just have a day where you're just not as recovered, or you didn't sleep as well, or your head's not in the game, or there's various things that can impact that. And if you make a choice based on that moment, you're missing the bigger kind of trajectory of things, because it's trends that matter overall rather than, blips in the system.
Yeah, I'm liking this little theme with our clients at the moment, which is we've been very clear that a plateau is defined as at least 4 to 6 weeks of being stuck at the same level. Because if you get 3 days in and you haven't changed weight, I'm like, well, anything could have changed that time. You could just need a good poo. Like, there's all these things that could happen in that time period that would make a huge difference on your weight going up and down, your energy being in the right spot, your strength being good, all of these things, right? So giving yourself a plateau is defined by a minimum of at least 4 weeks. In many ways means that your focus right now needs to be important enough for it to last at least 4 weeks, ideally a bit longer. 8 to 12 would be lovely. But Yeah, that's a key part. And I think certainly for our initial little insight into the 16 weeks of body reset, we do have a specific phase of movement and then strength and then metabolic for a minimum of 4 weeks each. One is six.
Mm.
And it does allow us to uh, really train that mental focus of a one season as much
Mhm.
as it does, uh, actually seeing progress and really maximizing results there too. Because your body does need time to adapt. If you change your workouts every single week, you one have no idea if you've progressed, and two, you won't have because your body hasn't had that adaptation response. So, for many, many reasons, it is more effective. But from a mental or emotional load standpoint, I promise you'll enjoy it so much more. We get rid of the overwhelm, we get rid of that fatigue of which one am I doing this week, and you just trust it, you lock it in, and that's where that progression aspect becomes so much more useful.
Mm. And to add to the plateau piece is that it's a plateau is when things haven't changed for 4 weeks, when you've kept all the variables the same. So you're still eating well, you're still moving well, you're still sleeping well, you're still doing all those things,
Hmm.
and it hasn't changed. That's a true plateau. If your weight didn't change, for example, in 4 weeks, but you changed everything else, went out for dinner and you did all these other things, that's not a plateau. That's just you went out and did a whole lot of different stuff that wasn't on plan. So the plateau, that kind of that what's the word? The defining the plateau as 4 weeks is a really nice filter because it is exactly like you said, it's a reason to keep doing the things for a little bit longer so we can actually see, is this working or do we need to make some adjustments or not?
Yeah. If there are many variables, there need to be many variables that are studied. And I think
Mm.
in that example, if you are someone that is particularly busy or has 3 kids running around or lots of variables that need to be studied that are going on in the background while you're trying to do a damn strength phase, it doesn't mean give up and you can't do it. It just means that won't be a 4 week phase. It'll likely be a 12-week phase, right?
Yeah.
Because if we can get those averages, as you said, we can now start to really lock and load that there will be some or many variables week to week, but month to month, we should feel that we're generally still in the right ballpark, right? So
Mm.
it does not mean that you cannot achieve the result. It may just mean that the timeline is different. And if you enjoy it and you're actually truly doing this for the long run anyway, it doesn't matter what rush are you in, but it allows you to
Mm.
make sure you can integrate it in with everything else you're doing. So, yeah, there's a lot of kind of personal ownership, hopefully, in this discussion around how am I managing my emotions in order to chunk my focus into sections, and that will fundamentally remove confusion. But then, secondly, okay, now we have a clear focus. We actually can get specific. We can get excited around a phase because we have a number, we have a timeline, and we remove all the extra BS, all the extra noise that makes us confused or scattered.
Yeah, yeah, that's really nice.
Cool. All right, team. Look, the only thing I'll leave you with here then will be what season are you in right now? If you're not sure, choose one of those three. Are you in a fitness season? Are you in a strength season or a fat loss? And if you chose fat loss or fitness without doing strength in the last 12 months, you're wrong. Go back to strength and start to build that progression again. Um, and of course, many of the trainings that you will see on our podcast, our YouTubes, our Facebook group to help you out in that space. More than happy to send through a training if you want to reach out. But getting specific on what season you are in first will help and give you a lot more focus, a lot more confidence moving forward.